No, I was wrong. I was wrong. I was disturbingly wrong on that one. I was told that Javonte would be nothing, that it was Jaden Blue that would be the starting back. I thought it would be fine, but the usage was dreadful. You could not catch me drafting Kaleb Johnson. Oh my God. Oh my God. I could not have been more wrong. What I got right and what I got wrong this fantasy season. That's right. I'm taking accountability here. I have no problem holding myself accountable for being wrong here. I like to take the Eminem 8 Mile approach, if you will. I have zero problem roasting myself in my failures. So let's do this. Obviously, though, I am not including players that got right or wrong via random injury. There is no point in bragging about being right on James Conner when the man played an entire 2 games. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and dive in. Where did I hit? And where did I completely whiff? Of all the calls that I made this season, Javonte Williams is the one that I am by far the most proud of. And it wasn't just the success that he brought to fantasy teams and to my fantasy teams personally. It was the success that he brought to himself. I'm legitimately proud of him. And it was quite a process to get there all throughout draft season with such an incredibly deep running back class where you could literally find start-worthy gems on day 3. There was a constant assumption that Dallas was a potential candidate to not only clearly take a running back to be their starting running back, but potentially take a running back in the first round. They did not. They instead invested in offensive line. To their credit, that was the right move. I agree with that. I agreed with it at the time. It was very controversial in general, but it was the correct decision considering how much their offensive line needed work. But again, with the depth, we all assumed that Dallas would draft a day 2 running back because, again, the depth was incredible. If you didn't get an Ashton Genty or an Amari and Hampton, surely you would want R.J. Harvey, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, even Cam Scatabo. But the rounds kept passing and Dallas remained without a running back until they overdrafted Jaden Blue in the 5th. For reference, guys that were drafted behind Jaden Blue include Ollie Gordon, Kyle Monangai, and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, among others. Ultimately, they made the right decision, sticking with Javonte Williams as the lead back. All offseason, I had to defend my stance so much on Javonte Williams as the clear lead back and excellent value at his ADP. I was told that Javonte would be nothing, that it was Jaden Blue that would be the starting back. Same Jaden Blue that has had no impact. I was told that even Miles Sanders could steal his job. The same Miles Sanders that lost his job to Chuba Hubbard, who subsequently lost his job to Rico Dowdle, who was ushered out of Dallas. That was very interesting time loop there. But I held on to the belief that Javonte Williams was the lead back here and that perhaps legitimately it just took him a two full years to recover from his ACL injury. And sure enough, that was the case. We got career highs across the board. He had a fantastic season. Big win for me. Oh my God, this one is so embarrassing. But we have to do this. We have to talk about the ones that I got wrong. But this one is particularly embarrassing. My favorite player to never leave fantasy drafts without was Courtland Sutton. Oh my God. Oh my God. I could not have been more wrong. I don't even know if I can quantify into words how much this hurt me because I was a true believer. I drank the Kool-Aid. I was deep within it. And usually I don't get this deep, but man, I was deep. And apparently I was deep and apparently delusional on this one. I completely disregarded the potential of Bo Nix having a year 2 regression. I was like, yeah, the offensive line's too good. He's got plenty of weapons. He's got a great coach. They drafted a running back who can pass catch. They got J.K. They got a great defense. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? My logic was sound, I think, in theory. Because once Bo Nix shook off his rookie struggles, he truly ascended and he locked in specifically on Courtland Sutton. There was no relevancy or very limited relevancy from any other pass catcher. And as the 2024 season progressed, Courtland Sutton was incredible to the point where he was literally wide receiver 8 in fantasy points in half PPR in the back half of the season, weeks 9 through 18. But I can admit my willingness to ignore the potential second-year regression was a big oversight there. I got too greedy. And my eyes got too big. I looked at him with love in my heart. I did not anticipate that Troy Franklin would be the one emerging. I assumed if anyone did, it would be Pat Bryant as the hot new rookie, or maybe even Marvin Mims as a nice little gadgety player that Sean Payton would turn to and give all the touchdowns to. I even thought it could be Devon Vele. I didn't see Troy Franklin coming. I was fortunate that Courtland Sutton's ADP wasn't so high that it completely derailed my fantasy teams, but it definitely didn't help. Here's another one that I had to defend to the bitter end. Oh my gosh, James Cook. James Cook. The most popular word used with James Cook all off season. Can you guess what it was? I'll give you 2 seconds to guess what it was right now. What was the most popular word used in tandem with James Cook this offseason? 1, 2, regression. It was regression. Rest assured, everyone said that touchdown regression was coming. There was no possible way that he could repeat his fantasy performance from 2024. There was a big reduction coming. Then he was not going to pay off at his ADP. I had a different stance. The only problem I had with James Cook was the contract issue. As long as that was resolved, I was all in. The reason for the touchdown regression not scaring me is because regression is often tied to running backs that were overworked. James Cook was not overworked last year. He was actually underutilized. Cook actually saw a reduction in workload, very mild, extremely negligible, but a tiny reduction. In 2023, he had 237 carries in 17 games. In 2024, he had 207 carries in 16 games for just over 1,000 yards. And the 16 touchdowns, that was a big one. From my perspective, touchdowns could dip a little. We would likely, though, in the event that the touchdowns dipped, see an increase in his overall usage, his overall workload, and a better fantasy performance with more volume. Obviously, we have 1 game left, but what exactly did we see? Massive increase in workload, over 300 carries, over 1,600 yards, and most importantly for us, a better fantasy finish, absolutely paying off and exceeding his ADP. Yes, I was pro Alvin Kamara. It brings me great pain and suffering to admit that. I would like to take that, put it into a coffin, put it in the ground and ignore it. But unfortunately, I do have to hold myself accountable and say that, I was very much so pro drafting Alvin Kamara and thought he was excellent value at his ADP. I was looking forward to Kellen Moore coming in offensively, thinking surely Kellen Moore, who runs extremely high-paced offenses, would want to use Alvin Kamara in a high-capacity receiving role. No, I was wrong. I was wrong. I was disturbingly wrong on that one. This was a case of being 1 year too late on getting out of an aging running back in a bad offense. Now, to their credit, they eventually turned it around back half of the season. Shout out to Tyler Shuck. But Alvin Kamara had succeeded in bad offenses before because of his value for his receiving upside. I thought it would be fine, but the usage was dreadful. Can you remember the last time that we saw regular games, like regular season games, frequently, where Alvin Kamara had 20 or fewer receiving yards? I don't. It never existed. This version of Alvin Kamara never existed. Was I expecting him to be Christian McCaffrey? No, but I wasn't expecting it to be this bad here. This was a version of Alvin Kamara that I don't recognize. I blamed Kellen Moore for a while. Honestly, I still think he is kind of to blame. But ultimately, it's time that we put Kamara out to pasture because he made it abundantly clear that he is not going anywhere. He is never leaving New Orleans. So we talked about 2 players that I got correct for being pro drafting them, but what about players that I got correct for completely fading into oblivion? I rarely do that because it can come back to bite you like major egg on your face. So I really typically don't take those like massively harsh stances, right? But I was very much so anti-Kaleb Johnson and pro-ish Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. You could not catch me drafting Kaleb Johnson. And here's the thing with me. I'm very rarely a full fade person. There's always a degree to which I will draft a player. You got to do something extremely wrong for me to just make you a full fade. And he had never been in the NFL, so he'd done nothing wrong to deserve that. There's only so many rounds that a player can sit on top of the ADP list and you just keep bypassing him. Eventually, I can get on board with drafting somebody, but unfortunately, not Kaleb Johnson. The concept was pretty straightforward. We cannot anoint a running back as the heir apparent when the team has done absolutely nothing to indicate that running back would start in any way, shape, or form. The Steelers straight up gave Jalen Warren, and while I understand it was nothing fancy, they straight up gave him a contract, and they were very clear in both their words and their actions about what they intended to do. So while I understand that nobody wanted to see Jalen Warren ascend to the RB1 role, the Steelers were pretty clear that was going to happen. So why were we drafting Kaleb Johnson so high when at the very best he was a handcuff? And it was also pretty clear that Kenneth Gainwell, someone that they clearly liked and someone that I have always been very fond of as well, because as you guys have maybe been able to deduce, I do love a pass catching back. I love a converted wide receiver. It was pretty clear that he was going to play a role as well. So if Jaylen Warren was the lead back and Kenneth Gainwell was going to be the change of pace pass catching back, it made too much sense to just fade Kaleb Johnson because there was no logical place for him to fit in. And also, as a fantasy football manager, I have a betrayal list, and Arthur Smith is pretty much the king of that list. So in no way, shape, or form will I ever trust a rookie under Arthur Smith. I wanted to include this one because I did get it wrong, but I do stand firmly on business that the thought process was right on this one. Analytically, it made sense. I truly believe that Kenneth Walker would have a breakout year because he was a perfect fit for Clint Kubiak's system. It made logical sense. The knock on Kenneth Walker was that he is a home run hitting running back that fails to thrive on a consistent basis. His efficiency stats show that was a valid concern, and that valid concern actually should have been a benefit for him in the system. And so we also thought that they would be tapping into the receiving upside here for Kenneth Walker as well. Overall, this would just be a great opportunity for him. What I did not account for is that he would be completely iced out of the red zone. I saw no visual struggles for Kenneth Walker on the field that would have justified this. He had a fine season. It's not as if he was putting on significant struggles, right? Like, let's look back. Let's go to the Miles Sanders. Like, let's look back at Miles Sanders in Carolina when he was overtaken there by Chuba Hubbard. It made logical sense because Miles Sanders was struggling on the field. Kenneth Walker never struggled this season. The theory that he needed to earn his way into getting goal line touches was kind of wild to me, particularly for someone who had 24 rushing touchdowns in his first 3 seasons, despite dealing with questionable offensive line play. I don't know, but I got it wrong. I guess we can look on the bright side here and say he finally made it through a season fully healthy. There is one more game, knock on wood. Another one here. It is no coincidence that a lot of my big hits were on running backs. That is for a very specific reason. Because the other thing that I got right was being very pro robust RB drafting. And this was pretty critical because this is not my typical draft strategy. Typically, it pains me. I don't like drafting a bunch of running backs earlier. Again, I like pass catchers. I like wide receivers. Receptions make me happy. I enjoy a hero RB strategy. I like to grab a Bijan, Christian McCaffrey, even a Kyron Williams type, right? Even though he doesn't catch a ton of passes, right? I like to grab my hero RB, draft him early, and then just draft a whole bunch of receivers, and then find a running back that I like later. But unfortunately, this season, the running back dead zone was kind of terrifying. And my biggest recommendation was that people draft robust RB and make sure that you were coming out of the first rounds with 2 running backs. Really, with the exception of Ashton Genty and the version of Chase Brown that existed before Joe Flacco showed up, the top running backs did top running back things. And the value that your team had from drafting Bijan, Jameer, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Devon Achane, James Cook, Kyron Williams, Josh Jacobs, absolutely overall paid off. My sincerest apologies on this one. I truly thought that Justin Jefferson was quarterback proof. I thought that Jordan Addison would not be a problem because JJ McCarthy has a big enough arm to get the ball downfield. I thought it would be a good match. This year, we discovered that there's no such thing as quarterback proof for Justin Jefferson. Yeah. He went through a legitimate nightmare in real time, and we all were forced to watch it to the point where we were forced to have to bench Justin Jefferson. Crazy. But technically, this was a rookie season for JJ McCarthy, quite frankly, because again, he didn't play at all last season. There was no preparation or anything, so this was a fresh season for him. And quite frankly, I've never been afraid of rookie quarterbacks. It's the second year regression that worries me, ironically, as we discussed, did not happen with Bo Nix. But often young quarterbacks come out, do very well their first seasons, and most of the time they end up hyper-targeting their wide receiver 1 because that is the easiest path to being a successful quarterback. And when you have a player like Justin Jefferson, it just makes logical sense that you should be able to get the ball to him. But apparently Justin Jefferson is not everyone's cup of tea, and he was not JJ McCarthy's cup of tea. This one's short and sweet. I hope they spend the offseason together building rapport so that JJ McCarthy can accurately deliver passes to Justin Jefferson in 2026. Yeah. A couple of tiny things that I got right. Woody Marks. One thing that I was absolutely right on was that Joe Mixon would not be on the field in 2025. And I told you to avoid him at all costs. Do not draft, do not draft, do not draft under any circumstances. I also said that Woody Marks was the running back that you wanted to draft. That was correct. It took us a while to get there. I don't know why it took us a while to get there, but we got there. So, win? Yeah. One that I got right and wrong-ish. I told you to fade Aaron Jones. That was correct. I said that he was extremely unsuccessful at the goal line in 2024, and that was the reason they brought in Jordan Mason, and that touchdowns would be non-existent for Aaron Jones. That was correct. What was not correct was the reason, because Jordan Mason would be getting the majority of the goal line work. I thought that would be the reason, but apparently there was just not going to be goal line work. So shout out to the Minnesota Vikings. Another technical win. I told you that Davante Adams looked in peak form in 2024 and that I did not anticipate any kind of regression on him, and that his impact on the Rams was going to be significant. That was correct. That was correct. Where I was wrong was that the impact would actually affect Puka Nacua. While it did affect him getting touchdowns, apparently I underestimated Matt Stafford's ability to ensure that if Puka didn't get looks in the red zone, he was getting well enough receptions that it literally would not matter in his clear MVP caliber here. It did not matter how many touchdowns Davante Adams took away. Puka Nacua is inevitable. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Sarah Time, so make sure that you are locked in, subscribe, following, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. More fun fantasy football content coming at you all off season long to get you ready ahead of time for 2026.